Hello, welcome back. I got another video for you today. This time, I'm going to talk about a little bit more about divorce, what is allowed and what is not allowed. So, if you watched the previous video, I'll give you a little bit more context into this particular one. So, make sure you check out the playlist to have everything in order. So, excuse me. So, just to get this out of the way, there is some times where God allows divorce, but it wasn't something that he intended to. He just allows it out of the extent of his mercy. Okay. So I lightly read this in the last video. So we're going to start with Matthew 5, verse 32. But I say unto you that whosoever shall put away his wife, saving for the cause of fornication, causeth her to commit adultery. And whosoever shall marry her that is divorced committeth adultery. So what's actually interesting is that by God's standard in his eyes, if you divorce somebody other than them cheating on you, essentially, then you are causing that person to um, be adulterous if they marry somebody else because legally binding, you guys are still married. So unless it's on the premise on unfaithfulness, you are conjoined with God. And this is talking about actual earthly marriages. It's not talking about the spiritual one that we have with God. So it just gives you a little bit of a contrast what God takes seriously and what does he allow, right? So Matthew 9:19, and I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. And whoso marrieth her which is put away doth commit adultery. So again, I use the KJV. If you want to use another translation to follow along, that's fine by me. But the idea is the same book, just 12 chapter difference, where God only allows this divorce if it's adultery. Whatever it is that's infracting of it, you can't divorce that person because any other reason is just not sufficient in the eyes of God. So there's another also reason as well, because when it comes to an actual marriage, some things don't work, and just because no matter how hard you try to do so, there's instances where a marriage is not even valid because of this exact notion, where Paul adds abandonment by an unbeliever as a valid cause, right? First Corinthians 7, verse 15. But if the unbelieving depart, let him depart. A brother or a sister is not under bondage in such cases, but God hath called us to peace. Which is super unfortunate. There'll be times where you try to yoke with somebody who is just not in the same page as you, and you don't actually have a marriage because you don't believe in the same things, much less you don't believe in the same God. So obviously, you're not forced to be obligated to be with somebody who is not actually being in the same page as you, because remember, let two be one flesh, not two different flesh having two different notions, and just really just going at two different directions. We've been set on this path, the way, the truth, and the life. You can't really share that same thing if you're with somebody who supposed to be your spouse, your husband, or your wife, and it's just completely contrary to that exact notion. So, just to re-summarize, these are concessions due to human fallenness, not prescriptions for covenant breaking. Earthly marriage is temporary and can be broken due to sin, but the marriage between Christ and his church is eternal and unbreakable. That's the clear difference. That's why when we look at humans, error is expected of them because of the sin nature. However, when God came to provide the salvation, we don't see the exact same thing when it comes to that, because God cannot commit any errors. This is why you cannot compare it. Only you can contrast the differences, that obviously the covenant that we have with God is something that is way better and eternal by nature. Um, yeah, earthly marriage is temporary and can be broken due to sin, but the marriage between Christ and his church is eternal and unbreakable. God will not betroth himself to an unbeliever. So we can find that in 2 Corinthians 6, verses 14 and 18. Be ye not equally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion hath light with darkness? And what concord hath Christ with Belial? Or what part hath he had believing with an infidel? And what agreement hath the temple of God with idols? As God hath said, I will dwell in them, and walk in them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Wherefore come out and from among them, and be ye separate, saith the Lord. So it just continues on. I'll just give it to you to read the rest. But essentially, you can't be married if that one thing that's contingent on for you to being together is on the notion of belief, right? That same faith that pleases God, which is spoken of Romans, is what exactly he's longing for. If you don't have that at all, you're not connecting to him in any aspect or any regard. So it just emphasizes that only those with faith become his bride, the church. And Malachi 2, verses 4 to 14 and 16, it really expresses how much God disdains divorce. Okay. Yet ye say, wherefore? Because the Lord hath been witness because thee and the wife of thy youth, against whom thou hast dealt treacherously. Yet if she thy companion and the wife of thy covenant, and did not he make one? Yet he the residue of the Spirit, and wherefore one? That he might seek a godly seed. Therefore take heed to your spirit, and let no one deal treacherously against the wife of his youth, for the Lord, the God of Israel, saith that he hateth putting away. For one covering violence with his garments, saith the Lord. So essentially, it's just expressing that putting away is just like a figure of expression. In those times, it's saying, like, I'm going to basically treat you like some kind of object, I guess, and not treat you as a person and as like a added accessory. Where I'm like, okay, I'm done using you, and let me use something else. We're people with emotions, thoughts, and feelings and aspirations. We shouldn't be treated as like a regular common thing, like a coat or a pair of shoes or a purse, right? We're human beings made in the image and likeness of God, so we should be treated as such, especially when this huge commitment is not like something that's arbitrary and just an added extension of us. It becomes integral. So essentially, this passage just reveals God's disdain for divorce, describing it as a betrayal of covenant. This mirrors God's loyalty even in the face of his people's repeated unfaithfulness. So thank God we praise and worship a God that's able to really stand firm onto what he, I guess, asserts. Because without this role model, honestly, what will be the incentive to be with somebody, much less with God forever, if it's not built on promises and, of course, the virtue of keeping them and honor rather than just saying in vain, and it was never meant to be something taken seriously. So I think that's it for this particular video. Hopefully that helps you segment that throughout the entire scriptures. Eternal security is something that God has in mind for you. And so if you haven't experienced it, what are you waiting for? You're not guaranteed tomorrow. And of those that are within Christ, congratulations, you are understanding something that it's the case. And of course, we use the word of God to verify what is true away from what is false. So thank you again for watching this video. As always, take care and stay blessed.